Hey guys, this is Luke from Make Masking Optional. I'm here with Kristen Gilfeather, trustee candidate for District 5 for Billings Public Schools. You're not going to want to miss this interview.
Do you have any experience with evaluations? And is there anything about the superintendent's evaluations that stood out to you?
Yes, absolutely. I have lots of experience doing evaluations. Again, drawing from my 10 years of healthcare leadership, I've done hundreds of evaluations. We're actually in the middle of evaluation season right now. The thing that stood out to me about the superintendent's evaluation is the high remarks or the high marks with 0 comments. And truly my philosophy when I evaluate my staff is everybody's a 3 on a 1 to 5 scale if I can't come up with a comment. But more likely, everybody starts at a 3 or they start at meeting expectations. And when I decide to give somebody a frequently exceeds expectations or a partially meets or whatever the rating system is, I think that always has to be justified. Like, I need to be able to say why I'm giving you a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. And anytime I were to give a 5 out of 5, this is the best you could do, I really want to ask myself, is there anything that you could, any area where you could grow in this category? And more often than not, there is always room for improvement. Like, I don't think any human will ever reach this level of perfection known as a 5 out of 5, right? We're human. We make mistakes. We have room for growth. But more importantly, it needs to be justifiable. Like, I need to be able to speak to why I'm giving somebody a 4 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5 or a low remark. I would need to be able to speak to that. And if I can't speak to it, then that score probably isn't appropriate. So those were the things that stood out to me, were some really high marks and 0 comments from many of the trustees, which to me just really demonstrates the lack of experience conducting an evaluation, because evaluations should be meaningful. They should have areas for improvement. They should be able to highlight what's been done well. But when you get an evaluation that just says you're at the top of your game, it probably isn't very meaningful.
So in a follow-up to that, because we're talking about the superintendent and the contract and how the board handled that, what are your thoughts on the fact that for the past 3 years, the teachers have had to start the school year without a contract? Well, every year, the board extends the superintendent's contract mid-contract. So right now, I think he's under contract through 2025. And the teachers, they've been scrimping along, and they can't reach a contract before the start of the school year. Now, right now, they're in a 3-year agreement. But watch, in 3 years, if things don't change dramatically on the board, they'll be asked again to start the year and work for months without a contract, a labor contract. Well, we extend the superintendent's contract years in advance.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting in the most recent board meeting. I think it was in the February board meeting is where they discussed to extend and then ultimately voted to approve the extension of the contract. And I found that odd that you would extend a contract in the first third of the contract itself. When you look at contracts and kind of apply them same type of principles as policies, you don't review policies mid-year unless something has gone horribly wrong with your policy, right? And so I found that odd that was just the standard, it seemed the standard practice. And I'd be more curious to understand why the board does that. And there was actually even a comment from a parent just to say, hey, can you table this until after the elections? And it was met with, we hear you, but we're not going to do it. And so it just seemed a little strange to me, really, that the superintendent would have his contract extended when only, a third of it has been completed. And if that's been going on for, how long, I'd want to understand why. And, as it relates to the teacher's contract, I can't explain that. Like, I don't understand why the teachers would work without that contract in place. I certainly recognize that, many of them probably don't feel they have another option to not work, so they just do it. And to me, it seems um, like the school district recognizes that, well, they don't have a choice, so we can kind of do what we want, right? Make up our own rules because we can. And, I have very limited experience with unions in my professional career, but I do know that, our union agreements with the nurses happens at least 6 months before the end of their contract, and those are reviewed annually. So it's a lot of work goes into those union discussions. But there's always a deadline. You have to have something in place, and I think it's unacceptable to even ask teachers to work without a contract in place. It's unacceptable.
Yeah. So here's a, and you don't have to respond to this because you're on the ballot, but the BEA comes out and endorses four candidates, really, three that have been on the board for multiple years that have treated and disrespected the teachers the way that they have. And then they have the goal to say that these people are pro public education. And I wouldn't respond to that, but I just wanted to make the point that I think it's pretty telling of where the union lies when they're not even protecting their members, and they're endorsing candidates that have basically thumbed their nose at those people. Let's go to another question.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go down to the last one. So have you ever had to work with a team to accomplish one specific goal? And can you talk about how that happened, or in the process of it, or anything specific?
Yeah. I could probably come up with quite a few different examples. The one that actually is sticking in my mind is where, there was a lot of discussion where we were trying to implement a standard uniform policy, right? And there's lots of emotions when you start messing with what people get to wear to work.
Yes.
And
that got to be the most difficult thing.
It is very, very difficult. And so, the reason I bring it up is because we gathered, we really invited anyone to participate. So anyone it impacted was able to participate. And we sent out surveys to try and, gauge where they were at, what they wanted to have as their preference, that sort of thing. And what I found interesting about this process was there was a decision was made, but it was muddy. And as we were talking through the meeting of this decision, nobody was saying anything, and I'm just like, can you explain what these mean? Because we voted for two separate things and that's the solution, but they're two totally different things. And it was incredibly uncomfortable because I was the only one speaking. All the while people were sending me instant messages. They're like, I'm with you, Kristen, keep going. And I'm like, speak up. Nobody's speaking. And it was just kind of left on me. And finally, we ended that meeting. We didn't actually reach the goal. We decided to pause that work. But I certainly have worked in lots of areas on decisions, whether it's, for a goal or whatnot. But you need to know when to push forward, when to pull back, when to just step back and say, why are we doing this in the first place? And it kind of goes with does the ends justify the means? It kind of goes with a lot of other previous questions, is that all of these, the decision-making process isn't black and white. It's really gray. And you need to be able to just stop and pause and reflect and say, are we still moving in the direction that supports our values, that supports the mission of, the school district? Like, are we still taking the best interest of the students in mind? Is that why we're doing these things? And there might be something where you set out to achieve a goal with all the best intentions, and as you get down into the weeds of the project or the goal or the solution, you find that you've just gotten off track, and you need to be able to like stop and regroup and get back on track. And so I hope that answers the question kind of in a roundabout way. But I mean, I do have experience, in achieving goals, but also have experience setting out to do something and then realizing down the way that this isn't the right move. Let's pull back and regroup and figure out where we go from here.
That's good. All right, so we should have said this early on, but these questions, we asked the members of Make Masking Optional, members of the community, to submit questions. And so some of the questions that we've asked you tonight have come from members of the community. Some were cultivated by us, some I don't know where they came from, but they were asked. But final question that we're going to ask you, and it's not an easy one, but it's a really important one.
Okay.
But how can we create an environment of inclusion specifically for those in the LGBTQ community, while keeping pornography out of the schools?
This is
referring to the books that were just voted on, and we were told adamantly by the legal representation and by the board that the librarians, if we didn't allow these particular books in, that it would be excluding a particular group of people who is a minority percentage of the population who feels discriminated against, who feels excluded. It would be kicking them out. But I just am curious how you think we could include those people, make them feel welcome in the public schools.
Mm-hmm. So this is a really hard question, and one I hadn't really thought a lot about. And, there are certain lifestyles that not all parents agree with. And, it's important that we treat people with kindness and love. And I don't really consider the books being the source of inclusion, I guess. If the books never existed in the school library, would that still be excluding a certain category of kids? I'm not sure it would. And so I think, regarding that book, though, the thing that bothered me the most about the board's decision was their justification of, the language in the book isn't any worse than what the kids are saying in the hallway. But do we allow kids to talk to their teachers in the classroom with that language?
Yeah.
I expect that we don't. And if we don't allow that language to be spoken in the classroom, are we excluding those kids? And you can't speak like that. Removing books from a library like with that content, I don't know that it says we don't want to include an individual based on how they identify or are choosing to live their life. It seems more like an excuse to say, because these books exist in one high school library, my child feels included.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Guys, you had a chance to hear from Kristen Gilfeather. She's the candidate for Zone 5, Billings Public Schools. Don't forget to vote May 2nd in the election. Is that the right date? May 3rd. May 3rd. Vote by May 2nd so you're not late. It's a mail-in election. Kristen Gilfeather, you heard it tonight from her own words. I didn't plant seeds. I didn't say anything. Kristen Gilfeather, she is pro-parent. She's pro-children. She's pro-public education. She's pro-teacher. This is a candidate that you can believe in. And I think you should, she's proven tonight that she deserves your vote for Billings Public Schools. Kristen Gilfeather, good luck in the election. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.